That may be the greatest catch I've ever seen in my life.
Okay, I know we are going to be looking at some waiver wire running backs here to start out this video, but honestly, I mean, if we're looking at the waiver wire for the running back position, I think there are some intriguing calls this week. However, if you're looking at wide receiver, if you're looking at quarterback, tight end, there are a few names that I want to be highlighting, but not nearly enough for us to make an entire video just about the wide receiver position. So I'm going to cover all the waiver wire players that you should be looking at for week 7 this week in this one video. Now, of course, before we dive into it, go down there, drop a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and leave a comment with any question that you may have. And of course, every time you drop that like on a video and leave a comment at the same time, you get entered in to win a Fantasy Flock Network hat as long as you are subscribed to the channel. And let me actually stall for a second because I have to pull up our last video and get out some Fantasy Flock Network hats. And our first one coming out to Jacob says, would love a flock hat. Appreciate all your advice. And thank you so much, my friend, for supporting the channel. Would be really happy to send that out to you ASAP. And another one coming out says from Cody says, need that flock hat. You've helped me out so much this year, man. I feel like a wizard compared to my league mates. No, thank you so much for supporting the channel. I'm going to be really happy to send those out to y'all. Just make sure you go through, send me an email with your physical address so I can get that out to you ASAP. Just look at the description of the video. And yeah, let's go through. Let's dive into these must-add waiver wire players. Let's start it off with the running back that we were talking about being an intriguing last round draft pick coming into fantasy drafts this season. Of course, he's been dropped in every league, but now is the time to go through and look to pick him up. Rhamondre Stevenson. Now with Stevenson, this is a running back that we talked about a week ago as well, whenever he played against the Houston Texans and saw some work with Damien Harris being out with the chest injury. Now keep in mind, the snaps that we are about to be looking at with Rhamondre Stevenson. I mean, whether it's week 5, whether it's week 6, I mean, the volume here, you have to be putting a small asterisk next to it. Because if we would have seen Stevenson come out in week 5 and see 11 rush attempts compared to Damien Harris, we would have been jumping up and down saying it's happening, it's happening, it's happening. Because you know with Damien Harris, this was one of our do not draft running backs. I hate to go on a little quick tangent here. I want to say, yes, we have to take the L for not saying to draft Derrick Henry this year. He was among our top 5 running backs we were saying were on our do not draft list. But outside of that, who else were those running backs? Mike Davis, Myles Gaskin, Damien Harris, and Nick Chubb. I mean, we have crushed on pretty much every other call. With Damien Harris, a big reason I wasn't wanting to draft him was with Rhamondre Stevenson coming into this situation. If you were looking at Stevenson actually in the 2021 draft class being selected in the middle of the 4th round here, the team investment into Stevenson is very comparable to what you actually have with Damien Harris, who back in 2019 was drafted in the middle of the 3rd. And I'm not saying this because this tells us the exact talent level of the running backs here. However, I'm saying it in that fantasy football managers think that they can sit here and they can say with certainty that Damien Harris was going to be the every down running back coming into this New England Patriots offense throughout the entire season. Maybe every down's the poor choice of words, but at least early down running back. When I was saying, well, you don't know that for sure. I mean, why invest a 5th, 6th round pick into Harris when we can get Stevenson in the last round? This is a running back that if you look at the talent profile, I mean, he can do pretty much a little bit of everything here. This is a running back that isn't highly athletic, but he is fine carrying the balls between the tackles. And also something that he can do that Damien Harris cannot is he can actually get some usage in the receiving game. This is crucial with the James White injury, for James White being out the majority of the season. I mean, all the season. I don't know why I'm phrasing it like that. But anyway, here with Rhamondre Stevenson, this past week, you get 3 receptions, 39 receiving yards. I know that's not making us want to jump up and down, but it's giving us a small sneak peek on what we may have if something were to occur to Damien Harris. Because now we're going to be looking at this as a scenario and we're saying, well, with Harris, I know he was in and out with injury, but still this back-to-back weeks where you're seeing him deal with some of these nagging injuries. He sees 26 snaps compared to Stevenson's 17. If you're looking at the targets out of the backfield, I mean, you get pretty much everything going to Stevenson here. If you're going to be looking at the routes run, I mean, Stevenson is doubling the routes run that Damien Harris had. I mean, here you had Rhamondre Stevenson running 9 routes out of this backfield. I mean, out of the rest that you saw in this offense, with 4 going to Damien Harris, 7 going to Brandon Bolden. Clearly, it looks like New England could be potentially ramping up Stevenson to have this passing down role in New England. And at the same time, if you're looking at his frame, this is a running back that is 6 foot, 229 pounds. So if these injuries for Damien Harris linger, if these injuries for Damien Harris cause him to miss a week, you're going to be expecting that Ramondre Stevenson is stepping up to be the bell cow running back in New England. And I will say that if Damien Harris were to miss a week, keep in mind, we've been ranking Damien Harris as a low-end running back 2 in fantasy just based off of rushing touchdown upside alone. Ramondre Stevenson wouldn't be a low-end running back 2. Stevenson would be significantly higher than that. Just because you're looking at him and you're saying, well, he's not just picking up the slack from Damien Harris. At the same time, this backfield will go from seeing 3 running backs active in it to most likely only 2 guys actually getting touches, with Stevenson seeing the majority of the work. So clearly he's ahead of Brandon Bolden. I don't want to be looking at the raw fantasy points. I know he scores 15 points this week against the Dallas Cowboys, mainly given the fact that, he did have a rushing touchdown to go along with the usage in the receiving game. I think that's probably deceiving if you think that you can start Stevenson right away. However, he's a running back that now is a premium handcuff that if anything happens to Damien Harris, you can go through and jam him in. Now, our next running back, we talked about him being in a pretty nice matchup this week. Only in a full PPR format, you're going to be interested. J.D. McKissic, he was actually the running back 11 this week. Very similar. You have Antonio Gibson in and out of this game. So, it's hard to look at any of the data we're going to have with the snaps played between J.D. McKissic and with Antonio Gibson being valid. But what you really want to be looking at here with J.D. McKissic is the fact that there's a clear role that he has in this offense. And that role is just to be the passing down running back, where if something were to occur to Antonio Gibson, I don't think that role changes that much. I actually think that you maybe get J.D. McKissic, instead of seeing his usual 5 carries a game, maybe it gets bumped up to 9 carries a game, but it's not like he's going to be taking over for Antonio Gibson, given his slight frame that he has here. However, if you're looking at the upcoming schedule for J.D. McKissic, I'd imagine a lot of these games you actually have the Washington football team as just pretty big underdogs in. And based on the fact that against the Giants in week 2, when Washington was trailing that entire game, he came out and he actually has over 20 fantasy points. In week 6, when they were trailing against the Kansas City Chiefs the entire game, he almost gets to 20 fantasy points again, just based off the 10 targets alone that he sees in this offense. Now, the next 3 games that he plays, you have 1 against the Green Bay Packers, and that's week 7 as well. That's bye week hell. I know a lot of y'all are going to be dealing with a considerable amount of buys that you're really going to have no option but to be looking at running backs like J.D. McKissic to be sliding into your starting lineup. He also is going up against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers in week 10. I'm kind of just getting out the future crystal ball, whatever the hell it's called, and saying, this week 10 matchup will be perfect, and probably we're going to be calling him a must-start running back, knowing that you had Myles Gaskin seeing 10 receptions and 2 receiving touchdowns just a week ago. We've talked about Myles Gaskin for I don't know how long now, essentially just being J.D. McKissic, just being Nyheim Hines. You know who these running backs are. I think that with the injuries that you're actually getting over to Antonio Gibson, more in particular, his shin injury, probably going to be a spot that you might as well just want to go through and play him. Now, speaking of injuries, let's go over to the Cleveland backfield, where we're going to be looking at DAndre Johnson, a running back that looks like he may be getting the start here on Thursday night. Now, of course, this is not because of his own talent profile. Rather, this is just because the Nick Chubb injury. It's also because Kareem Hunt leaves this game early at the same time. Now, you really have no workload to be looking at here for DAndre Johnson. He comes away with a 1 carry, 1 reception. This is more so a speculative ad in that, like we already said, week 7 is going to be brutal for these bye weeks. We have already discussed this. And if you have no Kareem Hunt, if you have no Nick Chubb, I would imagine that you could do significantly worse than going through and playing DAndre Johnson, as, he will be the starting running back for Cleveland. And it's going to be a game where, let me at least just pull up so I can give you all a sense of how desperate you are most likely going to be to start someone on Thursday night here. That if you're looking at week 7, you actually have, it's laughable to see this many games taken off the slate. You have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. You have 13 games being played this week. And the majority of teams that are missing this week at the same time are from high-profile offenses like the Los Angeles Chargers, like the Dallas Cowboys. So yeah, I think you're probably going to be in a position where you have to start DAndre Johnson. He's a running back that we don't know exactly what the role is going to be like in the passing game, but it's not really going to matter. I mean, he's running behind the best offensive line in football. Now, our next running back, we are going to be going over and just not even saying to pick him up, because I know a lot of y'all actually can't pick him up unless you're playing in like a 10-team or an 8-man format. But I have to apologize. I have to apologize to anybody that said to bench Alex Collins. Now, y'all know with Alex Collins, this is a running back that I was saying, we are not interested in anybody from Seattle. With how bad Geno Smith was going to be coming into this week, we were saying, you know what? Bench Tyler Lockett. Try to find a better option than DK Metcalf if you can. And also, that goes for Alex Collins at the same time when we're expecting both Travis Homer and DJ Dallas to slightly work a little bit more into this offense. And at the same time, this offense was not going to be putting up that many points as well. Now, with Alex Collins, he goes over 100 rushing yards, gets a rushing touchdown at the same time. Now, I'm going to say that with Alex Collins here, if he is on your waiver wire, go through, pick him up, right? You're picking him up. But at the same time, you had 6 carries for Homer and Dallas. And more importantly, with DJ Dallas and Travis Homer, they actually had 6 receptions out of this backfield. Alex Collins had 0. So Alex Collins, still a player that more times than not, we will be going through and benching. But with Rashad Penny coming back possibly this next week, also the fact that this offense is going to be low scoring overall, and you already have some of these other secondary running backs working their way in here, probably starting him for the week 7 hell week. But outside of that, I think we will be trying to avoid him in most matchups. Now let's go over and let's not talk about Mark Ingram. I think at this point, we kind of know who Mark Ingram is. This is someone that has a good chance to see 15 touches any given week. But with that being said, there'll be some of the lowest value touches in football, knowing that he's not really going to have the usage in the receiving game, knowing that his offense is not going to be having that many trips to the red zone. So we kind of know who he is, probably still want to be avoiding. So let's go over to some interesting players at other positions. And let's start it off with someone who has been fantastic over the past 2 weeks. And it was a great matchup for him this week. We are talking about him potentially being an intriguing option in our live streams. And this is Ricky Seals-Jones. So if you're looking at Ricky Seals-Jones, of course, this is a journeyman tight end. It's pretty funny that this was someone, whenever he was back in Kansas City, I was kind of excited about, what would happen if something occurred to Travis Kelce? What would happen if he steps up into being the starting tight end for the Kansas City Chiefs? Obviously, that doesn't really matter anymore. But what matters is the situation that he finds himself in Washington. So this is a tight end that back in week 5, I mean, the volume was fantastic. You see him come out, you see him get 9 targets in this offense, 5 receptions, 41 receiving yards at the same time. Now, we know what you're doing in fantasy football more times than not is we're looking at matchups, we're looking at projected game flows a lot of times based on what Las Vegas is telling us with these lines, and we're going through and trying to combine that opportunity and the efficiency of a given player, and we're trying to see how that's going to look at the very end of the day. And here, I mean, you looked at Ricky Seals-Jones clearly indicating that he had the opportunity in week 5. In week 6, this was going to be a situation that the Washington football team was going to be just consistently dropping back to throw the ball. They come out and they have 6 targets going in the direction of Ricky Seals-Jones. I mean, that volume meets efficiency where he has 4 receptions, 58 receiving yards, and a receiving touchdown at the same time. So I think Ricky Seals-Jones probably a must-start tight end for really anybody whenever you have the combination of Curtis Samuel and Logan Thomas out of this Washington offense, just because there are so many targets to go around that I think Ricky Seals-Jones at a position of need, at a position that's decimated, and at the same time, knowing that you just have a considerable amount of teams on bye. Like I said, we're looking for depth this week. The name of the game is depth. Ricky Seals-Jones is going to be a fine plug-and-play tight end. Now let's go over to the wide receiver position. Let's talk about someone that, I mean, definitely was rostered in every single league earlier in the season. Now, I mean, you could possibly be picking him up in some 10-team formats. And I have to apologize as well. I said that he was not intriguing, and I did not want to start him this week in a tough matchup for the New York Giants. Sterling Shepard. Now with Sterling Shepard, he comes back to an offense that has no Saquon Barkley, no Kenny Golladay. All of a sudden, you have this stud rookie wide receiver breaking out in Kadarius Toney. But Kadarius Toney injured this game. So you have Sterling Shepard coming out in a very tough matchup where the New York Giants weren't able to effectively move the ball down the field. It doesn't really matter because he sees 14 targets this week, 14 targets, 76 receiving yards, 10 receptions at the same time. I mean, this next week against the Carolina Panthers, you don't love the matchup, but if he's only going to be just say one of two wide receivers in this offense with definitely at least one of Kenny Golladay or Kadarius Toney missing. I mean, we don't know what we're going to be getting back from Darius Slayton, but I imagine Slayton probably plays this next week. I mean, Shepard's going to have a ton of volume at the very minimum in this offense. And then 2 weeks from now, playing at Kansas City, I mean, we know that's the number one matchup we are chasing for our wide receivers. Yeah, Shepard, 100% a player that you need to pick up. We were a lot more excited in a PPR league knowing that you're never going to see him have an extremely high efficiency mark on a per target basis. You're not going to be seeing him have a very high touchdown rate, but still, I mean, based on the fact that this is a slot wide receiver that can see a considerable amount of targets overall in his offense, we definitely want to go through and pick him up. Now, our next wide receiver, we did not see anything from this past week, literally scored 0.0 points. But we've had some questions on the live stream, which honestly has been surprising me as of late on should I pick up Michael Gallup? And I'm sitting here going, why the hell is Michael Gallup ever hitting your waiver wire? I mean, this is a wide receiver that you were drafting with confidence coming into this season, pretty much a better version of Tyler Boyd, playing one of the most productive offenses in the NFL. We know that Michael Gallup does have the talent profile. And one thing that I want to kind of make a callback to with our draft guide this season, now, of course, we ranked Amari Cooper over Michael Gallup. Y'all know how much we love Amari Cooper and CeeDee Lamb. But to just talk about how impressive of a wide receiver that Michael Gallup is, if we go back to his second season in the NFL, we go back to 2019 with Michael Gallup. This is the year that Amari Cooper played this entire season with Dallas. If you're looking at a per game basis with targets per game and receiving yards per game, Michael Gallup averaged both more targets and receiving yards per game than Amari Cooper. Now, no, that is not me trying to talk down on Amari. I love Amari Cooper. We used to have a Raiders Amari jersey back up in the background of our videos. But still, it's more so to put into context that it's not that like you have CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, then just the Grand Canyon down until we get to Michael Gallup. It's more so, I mean, you have a clear wide receiver 1A, wide receiver 1B situation in Dallas. And Gallup still can be productive. With Michael Gallup, knowing just how efficient this offense has been overall, if you take some of these targets that Dalton Schultz has been getting, you take some of these targets that, I mean, you've also been getting from Cedric Wilson, I think that Michael Gallup will have enough volume in this offense to go around. Like if you're looking at Cedric Wilson over the past few weeks, I mean, Cedric Wilson this past week had 7 targets here. I mean, this is someone that's 42 receiving yards, 35 receiving yards, 30 receiving yards over the past 3 weeks. And no, I mean, that's not getting Michael Gallup there alone, but you would imagine that Michael Gallup's just a considerably better wide receiver than someone who was a 6th-round draft pick in the 2018 class. So the efficiency is going to be a lot better for Michael Gallup compared to what you have with Cedric Wilson. So yeah, definitely want to be going and picking up Gallup where we can. Now, another pickup, let's actually go over to the quarterback position. We very rarely talk about quarterbacks here, but I think it's something that we can do. And let's talk about Teddy Bridgewater. And that Teddy Bridgewater had a very impressive week this past week. Now, keep in mind, from a fantasy football standpoint, I mean, not necessarily from a real life NFL standpoint, if you're just going to be looking at what you also had with the turnovers in this offense. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater did come out, however, and Teddy Bridgewater did throw for over 330 yards. He had 3 passing touchdowns. Now, he had 4 turnovers, but that doesn't matter too much from a fantasy football standpoint. Now, I will say week 7, we're not going to be looking to start Teddy Bridgewater. But then from there, he has Washington, Dallas, Philadelphia, and you'll also be getting Jerry Jeudy coming back into this offense. I'd imagine that Jerry Jeudy will be a significant upgrade over what we are currently having as the wide receiver 2 here in Tim Patrick. Now, I'm actually probably expecting that we get Jerry Jeudy as the wide receiver 1. I think he opens up the offense a little bit more. So I think Teddy Bridgewater is possibly intriguing. And I just saw he has an October 10th birthday. That's a strong birthday. I'm telling you that for sure. Now, if you're going to be streaming for this next week, I actually think that Matt Ryan will be very interesting. And that if you're looking at Matt Ryan, this is a quarterback, while yes, he's been pretty disappointing so far this season, at least you know that he's going to be getting that Kyle Pitts breakout that we saw a week ago. And he has that added weapon in the passing game in Cordell Patterson. And he's getting Calvin Ridley back this week. And most of all, going up against the Miami Dolphins, who just gave the Jacksonville Jaguars their first win in like 20 games. I mean, it's going to be a great matchup. So if you're streaming and you have Justin Herbert, you have Dak Prescott, Matt Ryan will be definitely a great pickup option for you just to mainly play this 1 week, and then you could cut him after that. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all. I really hope you enjoyed this video. Please make sure you go down there, drop a like, leave a comment, subscribe to the channel if you did. It helps us out a ton. And yeah, as well, I mean, when you go and leave that comment, drop that like and subscribe, of course, you get entered in to win a Fantasy Flock Network hat. Please take advantage of that ASAP. And yeah, that's all I got for y'all. Have a great day, and I'll see y'all with the video tomorrow.